Okay. So before we go to the Gemarah, let's start the shiur by dedicating the shiur to two people who are having surgery today. One is Yitzchak Leib ben Chaya, and the other one is Zachariah Shimon ben Heidi.
Hannah Bracha.
Hannah Bracha. Okay. Ben Hannah Bracha. We pray that their surgery will go well, and the zechut of this learning should stand them in good stead. They should make a refuah shalema. Okay, so before we go to the Gemarah, I had two pieces of homework to do for you. Can you remember what they were? Who can remember? Michael's usually good at this. Michael, right, go on, Julia. What were my homework?
Well, they were both things that I mentioned, I think, but I think one was pecking order.
Pecking order. Correct. One was pecking order.
The other was along the same lines, but I can't remember exactly what it was.
Okay, well, you did very well there. 1 out of 2 is pretty good. The other one was also to do with Yibum, and that was how many wives do you have to do Yibum with? Okay, so let's say a person, well, first of all, let's say hello to Aura. Hello, Aura. We can't hear you because you're muted.
Yeah, hi, shalom.
Welcome to our shiur. We are talking about the concept of Yibum, which is levirate marriage. Okay, levirate marriage, which means that a person that dies, a man who dies without any children, his brother is obligated to marry the widow in order to perpetuate the name of the deceased. Any children the first child at least will be, as it were, considered to be the child of the deceased. It's called Yibum, levirate marriage in English. And we had two questions that were left over from last week that I didn't know the answers to and that I had to look up. One was, how many wives do you have to do Yibum with? So let's say a man dies with 10 wives and none of them have had children. Does the brother have to marry all 10 wives? That was the first question, how many wives you have to do Yibum with. And the second question was, as Julia remembered correctly, the pecking order. So if you've got 3 or 4 brothers, then who has to do the Yibum? Who gets first crack of the whip, as it were? So I looked it up, did my homework, which is unusual for me because I wasn't really very good at doing homework when I was a kid. And I didn't do it lastminute.com, which I always used to do either. Did it straight away. So I must be getting to be a better student in my old age. Right, who knows the answer? Who wants to guess the answer? Go on, Julia, what's the pecking order, since you remembered that question? What do you think?
Well, I would tend to think that it's probably the oldest.
You are quite right. The oldest has the first responsibility. What happens if he doesn't want to do it?
Any of the brothers, anyone who does want to do it can do it.
Correct. The first one, because there would be a question, wouldn't there? Let's say the first one doesn't want to do it. The question is, do we go down the pecking order, or do we straight away go to chalitza for the oldest one, right? Because he doesn't want to do Yibum. And what would that mean if we did that? If the first one comes along, the oldest one says, I don't want to do Yibum, but I'll do chalitza. Then what happens to the other ones?
That's it, then, isn't it?
They can't do it. They can't do anything.
Correct, that's it. Not only can they not do Yibum, they can't marry her at all, even if they wanted to. Even if it was not in a situation of Yibum, because it's their sister-in-law. And the only opportunity for somebody to marry your sister-in-law is if you do Yibum. So the question then arises, brother number 1 says, I don't want to do Yibum, but I'll do chalitza. do we, before we go to him for chalitza, do we go down the pecking order and say, anybody else interested in doing yibum with this lovely lady? Or do we say, okay, you just go ahead and do chalitza and that's the end of the story? What do you think, Julia?
Well, because of you agreeing with what Hannah said before, I think, yes, you give the others the opportunity.
You're right. I didn't know that I'd agreed with Hannah then. I didn't think I'd answered her, but she was right. Yes, Hannah, you were right. Then if the oldest one doesn't want it, then it then becomes first come, first served. Whoever puts their hand up first. And then if nobody's interested, and of course today we don't do yibum at all, it goes back to the oldest one to do chalitza. Now, if the oldest one refuses to do chalitza, he's a very naughty boy because he shouldn't. But then one of the others can do chalitza as well. So that was the answer to the second question. The first question was, how many wives do you have to do yibum with? And we raised a question about a king, because this was all about kings as well. A king is only allowed to have, who remembers how many? Yes, 18. Well done. King is only allowed to have 18 wives, which is probably 17 too many. But there you are. So an ordinary person can have as many as he wants. Shlomo HaMelech was said to have had how many? 1,000. That's right, Michael. 1,000 wives. Imagine that. 1,000 mothers-in-law. Anyway, so the answer to the question, what do you think the answer to the question is? How many wives do you have to do yibum with?
1.
You say 1, Hannah. Okay, in that case, which one?
The most senior?
Senior on what grounds? Senior on the one that's been married the longest, the oldest?
Anyone you want.
No, you've changed your mind now, Hannah.
Yeah. The
Anyone,
first one.
I'll go for anyone you want.
Okay, Hannah goes for anyone you want. What do you think, Johnny?
The first one that he married.
The first one that he married. All right.
I think the last one that he married.
That he married. That's interesting, Julia. Why do you say that?
Because they're likely to be the youngest and they're more likely to be able to conceive.
Okay, that's good logic. That's good logic. Not much point doing yibum with somebody who's past it for the purposes of maintaining the name. That's true. Okay, that's good logic. It's not the right answer, but it's a good logic. Johnny, what do you say? You said the oldest. You said the first one.
Yeah, but I've changed my mind now. I thought Julia was quite right.
Yeah,
made sense.
Julia's logic is right.
Yes.
But Hannah's second answer is correct. And the answer is you can do it with any of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Any of the wives. Once yibum is done, or chalitza for that matter, once yibum is done with one wife, what happens to the other wives, do you think?
They're set free.
That's correct. One yibum sets them all free, or one chalitza sets them all free. Because that's logical, isn't it? Because the point of the yibum is to maintain the name of the deceased. So once it's done, it's done.
But also it says the first son is the one who takes on the responsibility of maintaining. So if it's only the first one and she has other children, the other children belong to the new husband.
Correct.
So it's only one.
Yeah, so that's right. So once the yibum has been done, the other wives are set free. Okay. So I think we've got that now. We understand how the yibum works. These were good questions, and I'm glad whoever asked them. I can't remember who asked them, but thank you to whoever it was that asked them, because we've now know a load more information. So what we did last week was we finished the Mishnah, and we're going to start the Gemarah today. So it's actually a good place for Ora to join, because we're going to start right at the beginning of this new piece of Gemarah. It's on page 102 in the book that Johnny and Michael have, and it's going to be on the screen for you in 1 second or two. Let me know when you have it.
I think you should get a star for your homework.
I get a star for my homework. Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, give myself a gold star. Right. So here we go. The Gemarah says, there we go. The Gemarah says like this. Kohen Gadol, Dan. That quoting the Mishnah. As you know, the Gemarah is now going to drill down into the Mishnah and see exactly what it means and ask various questions about it. So the first question it asks is, it goes to the Mishnah. Let's just have a look what the Mishnah began with. Further up the page, there it is. It begins with Kohen Gadol Dan. Okay, the high priest can judge. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. The high priest can judge and he can be judged. Okay, so now the Gemarah is going to talk about this. And he says, the Gemarah says, pshita. Pshita. The modern Hebrew word pashut. What does that mean? Pashut.
Simply.
Simple. Yeah, it's simple. Pshita here in Gemarah language means that's obvious. That's obvious. Right? So it's obvious that a Kohen Gadol can judge. So what is the Mishnah trying to tell us? There must be a reason that the Mishnah has said something if it's obvious. The Mishnah, as you know, was edited by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and was shorthand notes so we wouldn't forget the halakha. Now, if something's obvious, then he wouldn't need to say it. He wouldn't need to, as it were, waste a Mishnah on telling us something that we could work out for ourselves. So the fact that he does mention it, the Gemarah says, there must be something else that they're trying to teach us here. What is it? Why is it?
Could it be that in the days of the Second Temple, the priesthood became very corrupt, and maybe people had the idea that the Kohen Gadol was above the law?
Well, that may be the case.
And he's reinforcing, as you say, it came to remind people the way it should be. And so Yehuda Nasi wrote it so to remind people that no matter what happens, he's not above the law.
Okay, well, that is the effect of what he's written. But the Gemarah is not satisfied with that, because the Gemarah says you could have worked that out for yourself, because no man is above the law. So the Gemarah answers the question, and he says, Danin oto itzricha lei. We need to say that he can be judged for the reason that Hannah just said. And so therefore, because we need to say the Kohen Gadol can be judged because nobody's above the law, stylistically, we then say, well, he can judge as well. It's obvious that he can judge because the Kohen Gadol does judge. Where do we find the Kohen Gadol judging? We're told in the Torah, you shall approach the Kohen who is in that day. The Kohanim were initially part of the judiciary. So it's obvious that he can judge. What's not that obvious is that he can be judged, because you might think that he's above the law. So the Gemarah says we needed to say that he can be judged, and therefore stylistically we put it in that he can judge as well. Pretty weak answer, really. And the Gemarah actually then says, you can imagine this conversation going on between two rabbis. It doesn't say who it is, but two Amoraim here. And they say, nah, that's not true. Ha nami pshita. That's also obvious, he says. It's obvious that he can be judged. how do we know that it's obvious? Ila dainin le ihu hechi dayan. It's also obvious. If others don't judge him, then how can he be a judge? We already had this. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago when we said that only somebody who is chayav to do a particular thing can be involved in it. Remember, we talked about whether children can blow the shofar for somebody because they're not a bar chiyuva, they are not obliged in the law. And then we went off at a tangent talking about women's mitzvot. Remember that?
Yeah.
So the Gemarah says, well, it's obvious. If he can judge, if you're telling me it's obvious he can judge, then it's obvious that he can be judged, because if he couldn't be judged, he wouldn't be allowed to be a judge for the reason we've just said. So that's a poor answer, says this Amorai. He says, I'm not buying that. He says, and anyway, he says, V'hachtiv, we have a pasuk, which of course you all know this pasuk really, really well. I'm being sarcastic here because it is a pasuk in Zephania. Okay, does anybody even know who Zephania was and where his book is?
A prophet.
He was a prophet. Huh?
Entire Psalm.
He was a prophet. Let's have a look at Zephania. I shall stop this share for a moment and put Zephania on the screen for you.
Isn't he entire Psalm?
I think he's part of his own book. I'm not sure. Let me just share the screen. Where there is Zephania. Should be up on the screen in a sec. There we go. So, Zephania was a prophet. And he says in the first verse of the second chapter of Zephania, he says, "Hit kosheshu v'koshu hagoy lo nichsaf." Okay, and it is translated here on the screen as "gather yourselves together." Yea, gather together, O nation that has no desire. That's not a great translation of Hitkosheshu. I looked up all sorts of translations and it all says the same thing, one way or another, to gather yourself together. But this Gemarah translates this word Hitkosheshu, Vakoshu, as something else completely. Let's go back to the Gemarah.
Steinsaltz says gather you.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Zephania should be familiar to all of us, because we say it in Birkot HaShachar, we remember him.
Go on.
After we say Shema Yisrael the first time, Ata Hashem Elokeinu, here further down it says in the thing, V'yakem lanu Hashem Elokeinu et hadavar she'ivtachtanu al yedei tzron yachozecha.
Oh, right. Well, I have to say that does not sound familiar to me. Maybe I don't daven it properly. I haven't got a siddur to have.
I've got an art scroll, Tiferet Yaakov HaShalem Siddur.
Okay. That's
And it's written there.
Hang on a minute. I've got a machzor, so it should be in there as well. Let me just have a look.
כאמור, בעת ההיא אביא אתכם, בעת קבצי אתכם, כי אתן אתכם לשם ותהילה בכל עמי הארץ.
Yes, Zephania Gimel, Johnny.
Let's have a look. I'm not doubting you for one moment.
Zephania Gimel.
Hang on. Birchat HaShachar, here we go.
Well spotted, Hannah.
Ma Yisrael.
No, it's not.
Towards the end.
Ba'et hahi avi etchem.
Ba'et hahi avi etchem, ba'et kaptzi etchem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's from Zephania Gimel, that's right. It says so over there, but that what you said something about we actually say the words of Zephania. Where was
Yeah,
that?
just before it says, before Kamu. Go to the beginning. Go back 3 words.
You see, what have you got there? You got Nusach Sefard?
Yeah.
I've got an excuse.
Mhm.
Because it
Not
does
in
not appear.
Ashkenaz.
It does not appear in Nusach Ashkenaz. Because in Nusach Ashkenaz it says, Avinu shebashamayim. You got that, yeah?
Yeah.
Asay imanu chesed ba'avur shimcha hagadol.
Yeah.
Shenikra aleinu. V'kayam lanu Adonai Eloheinu ma shekatuv ba'et hahi avi etchem. And it does not say Masha Katuv, whatever it was that you said, and quote Zephania. It is Zephania, and it says Zephania Gimel on the left-hand side of the page, where it's telling you where it is. But actually, in the words in Nusach Ashkenaz, it does not say Zephania. So I am excused, and all of Nusach Ashkenazis are excused. But well spotted there, Hannah. That's brilliant, excellent. All of you who daven Nusach Sefard should have known that, and I have got an excuse. Very good, excellent, Hannah, excellent. Okay, so I think we all need to go away and learn Zephania. I think that'll probably be at the rate we're doing Tanakh. I think we'll all probably be about 400 years old before we get to Zephania. But never mind, we can perhaps do it separately. So anyway, in the second pasuk of the second chapter of Zephania, it says hitkoshishu v'koshu. Rabbi Steinsaltz says gather yourself together, gather together, and that's the translation given wherever you look, really. However, the Art Scroll Gemarah, which I have here, says that he translates it as search within yourself and search. So he translates hitkoshashu as search within yourself. Now, the point is that this pasuk is a reflexive verb, hitkoshashu. Yeah, you're familiar with that. That's a reflexive. That means yourself. So gather yourself.
The word kasher, Johnny, like you're asking a kasher question yourself.
Could be. Question yourself, search yourself. Could be.
Kasher is a question. Yeah.
It could be. Yeah. Kasher means a difficulty. Yeah, it could be. So it's the reflexive. So if we go with the Art Scroll Gemarah translation, which is interesting, is not the same as the Gemarah as the Art Scroll Tanakh translation. The Gemarah translation is changed to fit our meaning in this Gemarah. He says there, search within yourself. That's the hitkoshashu, the reflexive verb. V'koshu, and search others. So if you look back in our Gemarah on the screen, he quotes this pasuk. V'amar, have you got it on the screen?
Yeah, I've got Zephania.
Michael says no, and Johnny
Zephania's on the screen. No, Zephania's on the screen.
Oh, Zephania's on the screen. Oh,
Yeah.
We don't want Zephania anymore. We want the Gemarah. Okay, let me get the Gemarah back up for you. There we go.
Okay.
Got it? Right, okay. So we're over here. V'hachativ, and it's written, hitkoshishu v'koshu, quoting Zephania. V'amar Reish Lakish. And Reish Lakish says that he translates this as kashet atzmacha v'achar kach kashet acherim. Now, the Steinsaltz translation here is adorn yourself first and adorn others, i.e. one who is not subject to judgment may not judge others. I'm not sure about this translation, adorn, but the...
It comes from that probably comes from the cachet, to decorate.
Yeah, it does. But what the Art Scroll translation is as follows. He says, correct yourself and then correct others. And he says, from this it follows that only somebody who can be judged can judge others. In other words, you've got to judge yourself before you judge others. You know, that old expression, put your own house in order before you start talking about other people. So Reish Lakish says, we don't need to be told either that a Kohen Gadol can judge or be judged, because we can learn it from the pasuk in Zephania. And so, therefore, I reject your explanation of why the Mishnah said it in the first place. So Reish Lakish said, I'm not impressed by your reasoning. There must be another reason. And so the Gemarah tries again. This is how Gemarah is, of course. You put forward a hypothesis. Somebody deals a blow to that hypothesis and makes it fail, and then you rethink and come up with another hypothesis. And this is the second hypothesis.
The pasuk, Zephania was talking about the general public. Wasn't talking about the Kohen Gadol.
It was a
Tell yourself your own nation, though, all nations.
Yeah, it was an exhortation to the people.
Yeah.
But what the Gemarah is saying is, well, the Kohen Gadol's part of the people. So they're the concept that somebody who can judge has to be able to be judged. That's what the pasuk is bringing up, the concept. So if we're saying that a Kohen Gadol can be judged, then if we say a Kohen Gadol can judge, then he has to be able to be judged as well. Even if you think that he might be above the law, or he might think that he's above the law, he's not. Because if he's allowed to be a judge, then he must have to be subject to judgment if appropriate, because of this pasuk. So now we're going to try again to see why we might think that there is a case where the Kohen Gadol is not judged, and he tries again. And the Gemarah says, Ella, rather, this is what it's coming to teach us. Aidei deka ba'ei lemitnei melech lodan v'lo daninoto, since the real meaning, the real goal of the Mishnah is to teach us that a king cannot be judged and cannot judge. Since that is what we were learning, Tananami, we also learned Kohen Gadol Dan V'Danin. It's a stylistic thing. It's a contrast. Remember that horrible question you used to get in your essays? Compare and contrast. Yeah, I used to hate those essays, compare and contrast. Because I could usually compare, but could never find the contrast. Here, it's a contrast. Okay, we're contrasting, the Mishnah is contrasting the king with the Kohen Gadol. And so says the Gemarah that the whole reason why the Mishnah brings the Kohen Gadol is in order to contrast it to the case of the king. A bit weak, really, but that's an answer put forward by the Gemarah. The Gemarah also says, in a roundabout way, in a what's the word? In a sort of a subtle way, that's a bit weak. How do we know the Gemarah thinks it's a bit weak? Because if it was a great answer, we'd move on.
Yeah.
And we don't move on because we say, ha kamash malon. If you want, I'll give you another proof. I'll bring a different proof. And then why would you bring a different proof if the first one's great? Well, you wouldn't. So the fact that they bring a different proof is indication that, it's a bit schwach. So they try again. Ha kamash malon. Here's another one. And he says he brings a brighter, keditania. He brings a brighter. Reminds you just what a brighter is. A brighter is another bunch of sayings of the rabbis of the time of the Mishnah, only they never made it into the final version of the Mishnah. but they still have great importance. So, Keditanya, as we have learnt in a brighter, here's a brighter that we're going to talk about now. Kohen Gadol sheharag et hanefesh b'mezid. A Kohen Gadol who kills somebody. B'mezid, what's that mean?
Willfully.
Willfully, on purpose, intentionally. A Kohen Gadol who kills another person intentionally, what happens to him?
That scroll says he's put to death.
Yeah, neherag.
Oh.
Neherag. He is put to death in the same as anybody else. You can't go around having your Kohen Gadol being a murderer. So if he murders somebody intentionally, he gets the same punishment as everybody else. B'shogeg. What if he kills somebody by accident? What does shogeg mean? It means that it was not intentional. I think we would call it manslaughter in the UK. I don't know what they call it in Australia. Also manslaughter. So let's just take one step back. An ordinary person who is not a Kohen Gadol, who kills somebody unintentionally, what is the halacha, please?
Goes to the city of refuge.
It goes to the city of refuge. And how do you know that, Michael?
It's quoted somewhere, and then he stays there until the Kohen Gadol dies.
Right. Okay. Well, let's jump right over to that. Now, it is in Parshat Mas'eh. I will share the screen with you.
Spoke about it a few weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah, we did mention it a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Where are we? Let's share the screen. There we go. Should have it in a sec. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just quickly whiz down this section here. This is all about the cities of refuge. Shem spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel when you cross into the land of Canaan. You shall designate cities for yourself. They shall be cities of refuge. And a murderer who killed a person unintentionally shall flee there." And then tells you where they should be, 3 on one side of the Jordan, 3 on another. And then it tells you the situation, what it means to do it maliciously and then by accident. And then when we get to verse 25, the congregation shall protect the murderer from the hand of the blood avenger, whilst he's in the city of refuge, and the congregation shall return him to the city of refuge to which he had fled, and he shall remain there, as Michael said, until the Kohen Gadol, who anointed him with the sacred oil, dies. Okay, now, what if the Kohen Gadol himself does an accidental murder? If he has to run to the city of refuge, how long does he have to stay there?
Till he dies. Till he dies.
Till he dies. Now then, the Torah's intention, or the person who has to run away to the city of refuge, is what? Is that eventually he should have the possibility, at least, of returning home. Because once the Kohen Gadol dies, he can leave. But the Kohen Gadol, if he goes to the city of refuge in this scenario, he can never have the possibility ever of returning home. Because once the Kohen Gadol dies...
Wait a second.
Do they not appoint another Kohen Gadol if he's...
Yeah, I'm with that. You can't be without a Kohen Gadol. So you'd appoint another one. So when the replacement dies, he can go.
Well, that's what you say, but that's not the halacha. Because the halacha is that it is the death of the Kohen Gadol at the time when the offense is committed.
What's the anointing? When's
One
the
opinion is
anointing?
it's the Kohen Gadol at the time when the offense is committed, in which case it's him. Or the other opinion is it's the Kohen Gadol at the time when he is, if you like, convicted. And that's still him, because until he's convicted, he's still the Kohen Gadol. So whilst you may say, well, it's the next Kohen Gadol, it isn't. It's him. So the Gemarah says, and we'll go back to the Gemarah in a sec, that you might think that a Kohen Gadol doesn't have to run off to the, or cannot run off to the city of refuge, because he can never be in the category of somebody who might be released. And so therefore it doesn't work. Let's go back to the Gemarah.
But they've anointed him with the oil. Excuse me, it's on the page. But what's the anointing with the oil?
When that's the point. Yeah. When he is appointed Kohen Gadol, he is anointed with the anointing oil.
Until the Kohen Gadol who anointed him with the Zephania, doesn't make sense, but okay. Who was appointed? Who was anointed?
Asher Mashachato, yeah, who yeah, it means who was anointed. Asher Mashachato, who was anointed.
Who was anointed, yeah. That's better, yeah. Thank you.
Right, so let's go back to the Gemarah then.
But wait a second, when he goes to the city of refuge, he can bring his wife and children there. So he can actually maintain his life in the city of refuge.
So what?
So it gives him although he can't leave the city of refuge, he's still got a life.
He can't leave it. That's the point. Let's have a look at the Gemarah. The point of the thing is that you'll see. Let's have a look in the Gemarah. So this is the prayera that we're talking about. B'shogeg, if he kills in error, goleh, he is exiled. Where to? To the cities of refuge. V'over. Okay, stop there for a second. The prayera then goes on to say something else. V'over al aseh, and he transgresses a positive commandment. V'al lo ta'aseh, and a negative commandment. Harehu kehedyot l'chol devarav. He's like an ordinary person. So this prayera says that you may think that this Kohen Gadol cannot be exiled. I'm telling you he can, says this prayera. And not only that, when he does an aveira, whether it's a positive or a negative aveira, then he is judged like every other person. That's what the prayera says. Now the Gemarah is going to look at that prayera and see what's what. So let's have a look what the prayera says. The Gemarah now is going to analyze the prayera. Julia, you're not happy. We can't hear you.
It wasn't related to, I was waiting for news. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Okay.
I thought you were showing your displeasure on the Gemarah. Okay, so the Gemarah now analyzes the prayera we've just said. B'mezid neherak, a high priest who kills somebody on purpose is put to death. That word again, pshita. That's obvious. That's obvious. Why do we need to be told that? Says the Gemarah, we need to be told that in the prayera because b'shogeg goleh itztrechile. We need to be told that he does get exiled because we might think otherwise. So why might you think otherwise? The Gemarah says that's also obvious. Hanami pshita, that's also obvious. Why? Itztrich, no, it isn't obvious, says the Gemarah. You need to be told that he gets exiled. Why? Salkadatach amina, I might have thought, or literally, it might enter into your mind. You might say, Hoel uchtiv, since it is written, V'yashav ba admot Kohen Gadol, and he has to stay there until the death of the Kohen Gadol, you might think, Ema, I might say, Kol deit le takanta b'chazara ligle. Anybody who has the opportunity to return from the city of refuge, ligle, he is exiled. Delate le takanta b'chazara, if there is no possibility that he can be ever released and return, lo ligle, then he's not exiled in the first place. That's what you might think. Why might you think such a thing? Why might you think such a thing? Hatanan, because we've learned in a Mishnah, in Makot, we've learned the following Mishnah. Hahoreg Kohen Gadol, somebody who kills a Kohen Gadol on purpose. Or Kohen Gadol shahareg et hanefesh. No, not on purpose. Or a Kohen Gadol who killed another person, obviously not on purpose, because if he's on purpose, he kills. This is unintentionally. Eino yotzei misham leolam. Either the person who kills a Kohen Gadol or the Kohen Gadol who kills unintentionally has to stay there forever. Now, I've explained to you why the Kohen Gadol who kills unintentionally can't ever leave. What about somebody who kills a Kohen Gadol? Why can't he ever be released? Why can't he ever be released?
Because it's a major crime to kill the Kohen Gadol. It's an extra punishment.
The Kohen Gadol's blood is redder than anybody else's?
Yes.
No.
No.
You said that the halakha says that the Kohen Gadol who's in office when the crime is committed, but he killed the Kohen Gadol who's in office when he committed the crime. So there's no Kohen Gadol to die for him to get out.
Exactly. That is exactly the answer. So the poor fellow is stuck there forever because there was no Kohen Gadol after he had committed that offense, and there was no Kohen Gadol at the time when he was convicted, because he was dead, and so therefore there is no Kohen Gadol to die. So if there's no Kohen Gadol to die, he can't die because you can only die once, and so he's stuck there forever. That's what the Mishnah in Makot tells us. Okay, he never leaves, and that apparently, according to the Rambam, is the halakha. If you look to the right-hand side of the page, you can see Rav Steinsaltz brings the halakha according to the Rambam. That is the halakha. So, Kamash Malan. So that's the case. So now we've got a problem. Why would you not think that? But hang on a minute. The Gemara gives us a retort here. Wait a minute. There is another. So you might think that since he's not able to be released, that he doesn't get sent there in the first place. That is the Havamina. That is the suggestion of our Gemara for why we were even told this in the Mishnah in the first place, because you might think that a Kohen Gadol doesn't get sent there because he can't get released ever. But we have another pasuk, and it is in Sefer Dvarim, which I will now show you on the screen.
Would it be only for his own safety he would need to go to the city of refuge? Because if he doesn't have to go to the city of refuge, anybody can kill him. So he would do for his own safety. He would want to go there.
Okay, so that's the perennial question, Michael, isn't it? What is the purpose of imprisonment, okay, or exile? Is it punishment? Is it deterrent?
Protection.
Is it retribution? Is it public safety? Or is it prison safety? Or is it all of the above? And that is a philosophical question, which is, what do you say, Julia?
Reform is also.
Okay, reform. Yes, we can't use reform with a small r. And all of those things potentially, and at different times and different situations, the purpose of an imprisonment or an exile will be different things. What you're saying, Michael, is right, that the Torah does say that the reason we send him off to this city of refuge is exactly that, for refuge. But there are also elements of the other things as well, isn't there? There has to be an element of deterrent. If you know, God forbid, if you kill somebody unintentionally, being a bit careless, you didn't intend to kill him, but you were a bit careless. If you know you're going to have to go to a city of refuge, in effect, you're going to be exiled for potentially a very long time, then you'd be a bit more careful with what you do. So there is an element of deterrence. Is there an element of public safety? Yes, if you're a reckless person who, even though you didn't intend to, you acted in a reckless manner. The situation that the Torah gives us is a person who is chopping wood, okay, and as he brings his axe up, the axe head flies off and kills somebody. Well, he didn't intend to. He was trying to chop wood. But the careful person, before he started chopping wood, would have checked to make sure that the axe head was firmly in place. And he didn't do that. So he is partially culpable. And that's why he has to go off to the city of refuge. So
yeah, but the main thing is surely biblically, in those times, revenge for somebody's death was the normal thing. So therefore, that would be the primary reason for going.
100%. It is the primary reason. But there are elements of the other things as well.
Okay.
You're right. It's definitely excuse me. It's definitely the primary reason. We know that because it actually says so. But I want to show you a pasuk now in Sefer Dvarim, in Parshat Shoftim. Let me share that with you right now.
Is the city of refuge only for murderers, Johnny?
Yes.
Only for murderers.
Right, there we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
I have highlighted a couple of words there. Tachin lecha haderech. Prepare the road for yourself. V'shilashta et gevul artzecha. And divide the boundaries of your land into 3. Asher yanchi lecha Hashem lekecha, where your God is giving you an inheritance. V'haya lanus shama, and it will be lanus, to flee, to run away. Kol rotzeach, which means
all murderers.
All murderers.
Yeah.
Kol rotzeach. So the Gemara is now going to pick up on that word kol, all. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
The translation that was up on the screen didn't say murderers, it said killers.
Yeah, I think that's correct, because a murderer does not go to the city of refuge. A manslaughterer, a killer by accident. You're quite right to pick up on that, Hannah. It's not a murderer. Rotzeach is the modern Hebrew word for murderer. But you're right, it doesn't mean a murderer in that pasuk, because we know a murderer, a first-degree murderer, is put to death. Only an unintentional killer goes to the city of refuge. So let's just go back to Gemarah.
Sorry, would there have been another word in those times for murderer?
Well, no, I don't think so. It's either rotzeach b'mezid, rotzeach b'shogeg, either a killer, a murderer, but on purpose
or accidentally.
Or accidentally. Yeah. Let's
Also,
just finish this.
it raises a question in my head about the Ten Commandments, because the Ten Commandments says al tirtzach,
Yes.
and we translate it as, well, either don't kill, but it's don't murder.
Well, it's both. It's both, isn't it? The Torah is telling you don't do either. Neither is a good thing to be doing. And the Ten Commandments are, if you like, that's the bullet point. And then you have to look at the footnotes to know what it means. Like, what about lo tignov? Don't steal. What does that mean?
Don't steal anything.
Kidnap.
Yes, many of the Mefarshim say that in that context of the Ten Commandments, it means don't kidnap, don't steal a person. So you've got to look at the footnotes. And that, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is why we have the Torah Shabbat al-Peh, the oral law, which is what we are studying now, even though it's no longer oral. It's now written down, but it is the oral law. Because without the oral law, you wouldn't know what all these things mean. So let's just finish this Gemarah before we finish today. So wait a minute, says the Gemarah. I don't need you to give me this Mishnah to tell me that a Kohen Gadol can be exiled. You're telling me I might think, because he can't ever be released, I might think he's not sent there in the first place. Why would I think such a stupid thing, says the Gemarah? There is a pasuk that tells me, Lanus Shama Kol Rotseach, every killer. Afilu Kohen Gadol b'mashma. That means even a Kohen Gadol. Kol means kol. Okay, that's what this part of the Mishnah says.
But
so
it doesn't, does it? In that, well, we know that the king can't be judged. So kol excludes the king.
Oh, that's a good question. Don't know. Good question. Homework. Okay. Where's my homework pad? Give me a second. Write it down. Okay. Kol Rotzeach. Okay, it's from Devarim. Where's it from? Devarim chapter from 19. 19:3. Kol Rotzeach. What about a king? Good question, Julia, as usual. Right, homework for me. All right. We're going to stop there because the next little piece of Gemarah is very interesting. But it's a slight, it's the Gemarah analyzing the next bit of the Breita. And since it's almost time up, we'll start that next week. Let's just summarize what we've done today. We have started to analyze our Mishnah, and we said, why do we need to have a Mishnah that tells us that a Kohen Gadol can be judged and can do the judging? It's obvious. And we said, no, it's not that obvious, but you might think that he's above being judged. Says the Gemarah, well, we bring you a pasuk that says, no, you're not. You have to judge yourself before you judge others. That was from Zephania. Hannah pointed out that Nusach Sefard daveners should have known about Zephania because it's in the davening. and I managed to wriggle out of it because it isn't in the Nusach Ashkenaz version, although it is on the left-hand side of the page where it came from. And then we said, well, what about a Kohen Gadol who has to go to a city of refuge? You might think he doesn't get to go there because he can't be released, because we now know that the Kohen Gadol who has to die for the person to be released is the one who is in the post, either when he commits the crime or when he is convicted, depending on which opinion you go by. And if there is no chance of him being released, you might think he's not sent there in the first place. We brought a braita that says, yes, he is sent there in the first place, and he's to stay there forever. And the Rambam says that's a halacha. And now we just did a little bit about what happens to a Kohen Gadol. We might think he's above the law. No, he's not. There's a pasuk in Parashat Shoftim that says, Kol Rotzeach, all killers. And Julia has given us the killer question of what about a king? And we, please God, will start next week with what about a king? And then we'll carry on. Any questions on what we have done today?
I was going to say, in Malachim, doesn't David tell Shlomo to leave somebody alone, and then if he doesn't misbehaves, he's to kill him, and he does?
He wasn't a king.
I think Shlomo was.
Oh, you mean he tells Shlomo that?
And
yeah,
Shlomo kills.
Yeah, I don't think the intention was that Shlomo would do it himself. Shlomo would get his,
henchman.
Yeah, and anyway, he was the person he was talking about. Was Chayav Misa, because he was Morid B'Malchus. He was a rebelling against the king. So he was just carrying out the execution order. So it wasn't a gratuitous killing. Michael, did you have a question? No. Okay. Fine. We will see you all next week.
Praise God. Good.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Refuah shlema to all the Sikhis. Should all
And
be
good news to everybody.
Amen. 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 Bye.